Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 2025 Directors Closeup Spirit Awards edition. I'm Maria Raquel Bossi, Senior Director of Education and International Programs at Film Independent. Before we start, I want to take a moment to thank all the partners that make Film Independent's important work possible. Thank you to this year's incredible supporters of the Directors Closeup, the Directors Guild of America, IMDb Pro, and SAG Indie. And thank you to our 2025 Film Independent Spirit Awards supporters, Premier Partner Lavazza, Principal Partner IMDb Pro, and official partners Bullet Frontier Whiskey, Fiji Water, and Mirabal. We so appreciate your support of the independent film community. Tonight, we continue our series with the nominees for Best Screenplay. They have written some of the most thought-provoking, thrilling, scary, funny, and touching films we have seen on the screen this year. So I'm really happy to have them here tonight with us. Here with us are Scott Beck and Bryan Woods. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hello.
Next up, we have Jesse Eisenberg of A Real Pain. Hi, Jesse. Oh, there he is. Hi, Jesse. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Mark.
Next up, we have Megan Park of My Old Ass. Hi, Megan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great to see you. And I love that I get to say that word. I want to say it every time. Next up, we have Aaron Schimberg of A Different Man.
Hey, glad to be.
Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you.
Great to see you all here. Congratulations, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us tonight. I hope you enjoy it as much as our audiences will enjoy it. And I am very happy that we have a returning moderator tonight, is screenwriter and director Daniel Waters, whose credits include the cult classic, of course, Heathers and Batman Returns. Hello, Daniel. Where are you?
Hey there.
Great to see you. And thank you so much for doing this, and take it away. Enjoy.
Okay, we're losing Jesse in like a half hour, so I'm going to speak fast and we're going to get crazy. And hey, everybody, I loved all your films and saw them multiple times. And this is going to be a wonderful experience without any tension or weirdness. Let's start off with an appetizer, some chips and salsa. Tell me your movie, not just your favorite movie, not just a movie you love, the movie that made you say, I want to do that. I want to create a great film. I can create a great film. Aaron Schimberg, what was the film that gave birth to you?
I think it was Summer School by Carl Reiner.
Please elaborate.
Mark Hart. Airplane. I don't know. These were early things that I saw that got me interested in the art form. I mean, very young.
You wanted to create that summer school experience for others?
Yeah, it's a funny movie. I think it holds up pretty well. And yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a more
No, that's
elegant answer.
Everyone's going to feel more highfalutin than you, but that's great. Bryan and Scott, do you have similar starting films that made you want, or you're completely different?
Probably different because we've been working together since we were 11 years old, but fell in love with movies before that. This is an impossible question you're asking, Daniel, but I think one of them that comes to mind is David Cronenberg's The Fly. It's a movie that is really heartbreaking as much as it is like disgusting. But like it's this horrific, tragic love story in the body of a genre movie, and I kind of adored the collision of that. And I feel like as filmmakers, that's often what we're trying to chase. But what about you, Bryan?
Yeah, and I think I saw both of us saw M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense at a very impressionable age. We were in 8th grade. We were making home movies and stuff. And it was just the right age to see a great kind of brilliant piece of writing. And I remember going into that movie with just, the kind of attitude of an 8th grader, like movies are stupid and like, what is this? I don't know. I just went in with like an asshole for some reason to this movie. I was just like, kind of against it, like Bruce Willis, like what's going on here? And the movie's it's so smart and gripping and emotional, and that ending makes you feel stupid. And it was just, I was at the right age to, like, I needed to be told that I was stupid, I guess. I don't know, but it was just it was a beautiful, brilliant film. And then Shyamalan's follow-up to that film, Unbreakable, was a beautiful introduction to like directing with like a capital D. It was shot in oneers, and just had like the control of tone over that film was very I left a big impression on, I think, both of us.
Wow, that's great. What's the biggest difference, biggest disagreement you and Brian and Scott have about a movie?
Biggest disagreement. I don't know that we've come up with one yet.
That's sad.
I wish I had an
what a
answer for
boring,
you, but
what
yeah,
a boring answer.
we're starting this off with a bang. Sorry.
Sorry about that. We
Really,
have
not
so
once
many-
we said that was great. You're kidding. That was awful.
No, it's in degrees. It's like, I like David Lynch's The Straight Story slightly more. I put it as a masterpiece,
Yeah.
and Scott disagrees that Blue Velvet's the best. It's like, it's not as fun as it sounds. No.
All right, well, we'll come back. Jesse, your mood car light, back of the car lighting. What was the movie
Yeah.
that made you?
I fell in love with Truffaut when I was 5, and
Oh
just
boy,
fe-
we went
no,
from,
I'm kidding,
we've gone from
I'm kidding.
summer school to we've gone from summer school to Truffaut.
No, I'm kidding. No, I think like the movie that I saw like when I was like 16 years old, I wasn't like a kid, really, but like when I saw like the movie Crimes and Misdemeanors, I was so taken aback because it was like about all the things that I like and all the things I think about, and they were all in the same movie, and I was acting at the time too, and like it was so dramatically like potent, but also very funny, and like what was funny didn't compromise what was dramatic, and what was dramatic didn't compromise what was funny. And I just to me, it's like, if I could, I'm constantly trying to do something like that, where it's like just this amazing kind of fine line between the comedy drama. Anyway, I think it was just amazing, and it was really exciting to me. Even though I was a little older than.
No, that's
Yeah.
fabulous. Megan, what movie made you think you could do this?
I grew up without a TV, so I'm kind of coming at this with like a weird, I never really thought about it as a kid, but I'm still playing catch up. Like, I just saw Forrest Gump in the last 2 years. Like, I'm still catching up on the classics. So, but I think probably Somewhere, the Sofia Coppola movie, there was something about the pacing of that movie that kind of blew me away and was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And just these long, suspended, kind of patient shots. I was like, damn, I didn't know you could do that in a movie. So that was the first time I saw one where I was like, oh yeah, I want to try that.
Nice. Now fast forward to now and look at that. You've created your own classic film that will breed new cinematic disciples. Let's get into the journey. You had a great idea for a movie. Who cares? Everyone has a great idea for a movie, especially here in Los Angeles, and they'll be happy to tell you about it. I want to hear about that cocoon butterfly moment where you realize, I'm going to actually write this idea. I have to write this idea. I'm going to finish writing this idea, a key step that people forget about. And I'm getting a fucking Independent Spirit nomination. Megan Park, your film saved my Thanksgiving, delighting a cabin full of viewers ages 12 to 88. I wish you had titled it My Kooky Summer, would have saved me a lot of grief. But let's talk about those first sparks.
Weirdly, I feel like I think about things for so long before I ever like open final draft or whatever. And I think it was having a baby that made me think about time. I didn't go do mushrooms in the woods in Canada to have this experience. But yeah, I think it just made me so viscerally aware of how quickly time went for the first time, and made me really emotional and nostalgic. And I was home in Canada. I grew up really close to where this movie was shot, and I was like, why the fuck did I ever want to leave here? This is so nice. I was appreciating it in a whole new way. But it was really becoming a mother, weirdly, that made me want to explore the themes in the movie, which doesn't seem like it would, but it did.
That's great. That's great. Jesse, I heard you wrote a lot of crappy comedies before you got to A Real Pain. What brought you to A Real Pain?
Well, from the crappy comedies, there was like 20 years in between of writing plays that were more personal and kind of like finding my voice. I wrote like one play that featured a character like David, which is the character I play in A Real Pain. And I wrote another play that I acted in playing the character of Benji that became kind of like, a version of what Kieran plays in the movie. And then I wrote a short story of the two of them going to Mongolia together. And that's what I was trying to adapt when it wasn't going well. And I switched it to this Holocaust tour. And that's when everything fell into place. I knew these characters so well and had written versions of them and other things. And once I had like the kind of framework for the story, because I wanted to tell a character story, but it can feel kind of listless if there's not like something undergirding it. And I don't love or my mind doesn't do complicated plots. So basically having this Holocaust story as like a structure for it allowed me to plop these two characters that I knew well into different situations. And for the Holocaust element to kind of be a commentary on the boys' pain, and their pain to be kind of like a commentary on bigger pain. And so it fell into place and then came pretty quickly.
Great. Bryan and Scott, I have a couple Mormon friends. They've said Heretic is the bomb. Like, I loved it, but apparently all Mormons love this movie, which is crazy to me. How did you get there?
All Mormons except the like official church, perhaps not so much. The movie came from a lot of different places. Our first kind of indie film that we made 10 years ago, we shot in Salt Lake City in Utah, and that was our introduction to Mormonism. We had never, we probably had met Mormons over the course of our life, but like formed close, like deep relationships and became friends with a lot of Mormons, and that was interesting to us. And we had always had this dream of writing a movie that's a conversation about religion. Our touchstones were oddly Robert Zemeckis's Contact and Stanley Kramer's Inherit the Wind, like kind of like popcorn movies that have like kind of like an adult intellectual conversation about religion in unexpected ways. And so we thought like, oh, that's the dream. Like one day we'll have an opinion on religion or what happens when you die. Like that was kind of like the germ of the idea. And then over the course of the last decade, we've kind of just been researching because we felt like we needed to study all the various world's religions that we didn't know about, and kind of just packing our heads in as we were writing other projects. And then a couple years ago, we just got to that point. We're getting older, so we just got to that point in our life where people that we love started passing away, and it kind of made us start thinking about returning to this project and exploring our fear of what happens when you die. So that's where Heretic came from.
Cool. I mean, do you have any interest in religion to begin with? I mean, were you both on the same page, or did you have to drag one more?
No.
You had to drag the other around a bit.
I mean, this movie really is standing on the shoulders of our, friendship and professional relationship of like 30 years of just having an interest in both the sectors of like religion and being non-religious, but the idea that everyone has some sort of personal relationship with existentialism and why are certain avenues of thought driven certain ways? Is it through certain ideologies? Anytime there's like a documentary about cults, like sign us up. We're constantly consuming those, like the Nexium cult, the documentary The Vow on HBO was something that really drove and inspired Heretic. And so it's always been, I think, in the discourse of our friendship.
Cool. Aaron, you did Different Man is not your only masterpiece. I'm a huge fan of Chain for Life, which you worked with Adam Pearson before. How did you get from there to here to Different Man?
Well, there's a direct line because when I made Shame for Life, which, as you said, stars Adam Pearson, a few people, not a lot of people, but a couple of people had said that my having Adam Pearson in my film at all was exploitative, and I was a little taken aback by this criticism because it's always been my desire to have I have a cleft palate. This is a subject that I write about. So to have people with disfigurements or characters with disfigurements played by actors with disfigurements. And if I'm criticized for that, I thought the only other options are to do what's historically been done, which is cast, able-bodied actors in prosthetics, or to not show this subject at all. And so I thought I was in a little bit of a bind. So I had this initial idea to do both in a movie, to have an actor in prosthetics and to have Adam Pearson and have these two characters and ideas kind of go to war with each other. And so that was the very initial idea.
Well, I thought it was splendid.
Thank you.
All y'all not only wrote your quasi masterpieces, you directed them. I'm dying to tap into that schizophrenia. I wrote and directed two widely unregarded films where the director and writer couldn't stand each other. Surely you've experienced the phenomenon of absolutely fucking nailing a scene on your laptop in your underwear at 1 a.m. as writer you, but when director you gets on the battlefield, adjustments need to be made. Yes, I'm aware you were all aided by amazing actors, but I'm going to be very sad and disappointed if you tell me everything went smoothly. Jesse, you wrote, you directed, and you were one of your own amazing actors. Was everything a Swiss watch?
Well, we were doing a movie at the Holocaust, so nothing was a Swiss watch. Or they were Swiss watches that were taken. But basically, for me, acting in it provided a really like kind of great advantage, which is that like I was like on the inside, so I can kind of like pace the scenes like I heard them in my head. I can like move my body to angle like another actor, which is I would never ask an actor in a scene, hey, can you angle your body to make the other guy turn to face his mark or whatever? But I could kind of like do that. So that was really advantageous. Like the difficult parts were probably just everything else. Just like technically it was difficult to like block a scene because I couldn't see what the scene looked like. I didn't want to film my face because who wants to film their face? And all sorts of just this uncomfortable things that come with like having to account for your own vanity. In terms of like working with the other actors, I kind of like I really like to stick to the script. I mean, the movie has a kind of like easy quality to it, but I don't like improv. But sometimes the actors were really great and spontaneous and you want to give them a little free reign, but it was always trying to figure out like what would be best for the movie. Like Kieran, for example, is a genius, but he also doesn't like standing on marks and rehearsing and telling you what he's going to do or taking notes or showing up more than a day before shooting. So like but the movie was so much better because he was so spontaneous and alive. So it was kind of just figuring out what works for each person and how I could account for what would make the movie the best possible version.
Did the writer in you ever say something's being lost, or you just were beyond that and like whatever happens now is just going to be its own thing?
I've made two movies only, but I'll tell you both experiences. I felt the same thing, which is like I go to the set and I just can't believe that anybody else has showed up or made a wall or brought a light. And so I just feel like anything we can get today is going to be amazing. So I don't have like really high expectations for accomplishing something on a given day. I just can't believe that anybody's there. And so no, I never thought like something's getting lost. I just kept thinking, I can't believe all of these colors that we're filming.
That's a great attitude. I wish I had it.
Oh, thanks.
Bryan and Scott, is one of you more the writer or more the director, or both of you writers, directors, and one's getting angry at the other, or is it just perfect?
No, it's all 50-50. Again, having worked together so long, like we really do share a mind. The disagreements are few and far between, but when they occur, it's usually because we do our homework ahead of time. So when we get to set, there's at least a unified vision there. That's super important to us.
Yeah, and one of the great things about Heretic is that Hugh Grant's process is like spending months kind of emailing and picking at the script and asking questions. And so we had this like 4-month buffer leading into the shoot where we were just basically trading essays back and forth with Hugh. And that was remarkable for us, because then we get to be on the exact same page, because we have time to process like a question and then talk amongst ourselves and then draft a response. Whereas on set, it's like it's so in the moment, and we never want to be saying different things or communicating different ideas. And so it's kind of we do have that mind meld, but it's a little bit of it's a little bit of yeah, it's harder territory for us in the moment, as opposed to leading into it with a good prep.
I'm trying to get you guys to argue with each other, but you
Oh man,
It's impossible.
You
We're
won't
very
do it.
mild
You
mannered.
won't
extremely
But,
boring.
I mean,
and-
but is there ever a time where one of you saying, "What about the script? What about that
Yeah,
part
no,
of
I
the
mean,
script that you like
or
so much?" Or are you guys
the
just both going with the flow the same way?
I think where it gets tricky is like if we're in rehearsals and an actor has an idea that totally flips like the intent of the scene, and we're trying to figure out is that a better version of the scene or not? And instead of there being a single person, we have to try and figure out like what's the heart of this scene, and is that something worth trying? Is it going to add 2 hours to the day, and is that something that we can stomach? And usually, our collaborators are pretty respectful. If we're like, give us a moment, we really need to figure this out, and we kind of sidebar with each other. But I think more than anything, usually one of us might be inspired to like go off the script instead of like go back to the script and find something new, because that spontaneity is so hard to really come across. And usually that's our favorite stuff. Like usually the best stuff that I feel like Hugh is doing in the movie sometimes is spontaneous stuff that he just brought, that day. And it was predicated on months of prep, but he was able to really wear the character's skin. He was so living inside of that he was able to bring really fresh ideas, and we try to embrace those as much as we can.
But we do disagree, and we do fight, and
I don't
but you'll be
believe you.
disappointed to learn that when we disagree, we end up usually just convincing each other of the other person's point of view, and then we just like flip flop, and then we're like, wait, now I'm arguing Scott's point from yesterday. So yeah, it's very boring over here. I'm sorry.
Oh, geez, I want to get you to yell at each other at some point tonight. But Aaron, was there ever a point where you wrote a great script? Was there ever a point where you were disappointed in the way the director was handling it?
I have to say it's a surprisingly accurate depiction of the screenplay, especially given our budget and our schedule. I feel that mostly we got in the movie that I wrote. There were little things like there was supposed to be a mouse that skitters across the table in one scene, drinking coffee, and we couldn't get the mouse, or it was too expensive or too complicated getting the mouse. So I said, well, okay, I have roaches in my apartment, so I'll bring a roach, and we'll get a roach instead. And then I put the roach in the coffee cup, and everyone says it's a Kafka reference, and it really bothers me, because I'm certainly I love Kafka, but I would never make such an obvious reference. So, there are little things like that. So.
Great. Megan, I love your script so much, and it looked like you were having a great time directing, but was there ever some friction between you, the writer, and you, the director?
I feel like I kind of go into every day being like nothing I thought was going to happen is going to happen. So I kind of just learn to like go with the flow, and know what I need to get. Like I'm always thinking like, okay, if everything goes to hell, what's just like the baseline that I need to get to like make this work in the edit? And then everything else is kind of just gravy. But I don't ever rehearse on the set or anything like that. I just spend a lot of time talking to the actors with the script, especially with young actors, just kind of going through like how it might go on the day, what might go wrong, how do you understand what's happening in the scene? But I don't really like run it. I don't want to kill it too much before we get on set. But I think the main thing that was really tough in this movie was honestly shooting on water is really hard. And there was so many days when the actors are out on a boat and I'm in a different boat and I don't have any reception. I can't see what's going on. And like it was just, there was a lot of trust, and just, directing people over a walkie was pretty tricky. But, you know, I mean, I don't know. I always just try to like to think about it as like we're not saving lives, you know. And I grew up as an actor on so many sets that were so stressful, so I try to just keep it really calm, and you hire great people and you give them the space to do what they do best. And I think that creates like a good atmosphere for everyone to be really flexible and creative and just chill, especially with when you're working with young actors. I think that's really important.
And I love your script so much. But how did you find Maisie Stella? I mean, was it a long process? And when the audition process, how did you know the actors getting it? How did
Well,
you
she,
know Maisie Stella was the one, or was that just so obvious?
you know, she read for my first film, The Fallout, and I was so taken with her. I didn't know who she was. I know she was a child actress and a musician, but I felt like she was so special. But there wasn't a part for her that was really right in the first film. So she was a little bit in the back of my mind, but I didn't know her. You know, I just had seen her read for the movie. I didn't really know her as a human. And then after I wrote it, I sent it to her and asked her to audition. And she was like, oh my God, like I have a boat and I also don't have my boating license. And there was like so many crazy similarities. And she had this freshness to her. And this, I really wanted a young woman who was very cool and very relatable, but very positive and optimistic and had like joie de vivre, I kept saying to them, and didn't feel like a, you know, traditional actress. And Maisie really had that special quality, and it was just amazing that we were able to make the film. You know, the producers and our financiers were like, whoever you want. And I just kind of was like, this is the person that I want. So I had her in the back of my mind. And yeah, as soon as she sent in the tape for the movie, it was so clear. It was really, there was nobody else ever really in the game after she came into it. And then we were able to build the cast around her, which was pretty.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
great. Jesse, we're going to try and get one more in for you. Okay, enough directing bullshit.
Yeah, great.
I want to chat about a step of the screenwriting process not often discussed. Who do you give it to read right after you're done? Before you give it to the people potentially paying you? Do you have a support group of friends and family? What exactly do you want to hear from them? Complete honesty or honey or genius? How's your take a good note, ignore a bad note radar?
Um, yeah, so I write at the library in New York City every day, and I sit next to a friend of mine named Jim. Jim writes his own scripts and I write mine, and we talk during the day. And it's an amazing relationship, and we keep each other on task and on track. And I will sometimes ask him a question like, should they go in the building or to the gas station? And it would, if I was if I was like sitting on my own, I would spend a week just thinking about it. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. And sometimes Jim doesn't even know what I'm referring to, but he just goes, "Oh, go to the gas station. That sounds good." And so I go to the gas station, and of course, it's fine. And so that has changed my process from writing like a play over the course of like 9 months to being able to write a movie script really quickly. And so he's so the only person I kind of care about. I like his taste, and he likes my taste and his things. And
This
that's
is
kind of
this is
if he says
this
it's
is
good.
a
And he,
daily process. This is like how often does Jim get
yeah.
these questions?
Oh yeah, this is a daily process. Yeah, like when I'm not
Oh,
working,
wow.
I go to the library and I write other things too. So it's an amazing relationship, and I've looked to him basically to be like the arbiter. If he likes my stuff, then it makes me feel good, and if he doesn't, I'll go and just rewrite it.
And you do the same thing for him.
Yeah.
Great, great.
Yeah.
But when the script is finished,
Oh yeah.
does Jim read the whole thing? Do you have other people read the whole thing?
Yeah, who do I send it to? I mean, so my producers are really amazing. It's Ali Herding, Emma Stone, and Dave McCary, and yeah, they're my producers, and I send them, yeah, only finished scripts. We're doing 3 movies together. I only send them the finished things though, because I don't want to bother them, and I also don't know if something's going to be good enough to be a movie until it's finished.
And what if they say something you know is wrong? What do you say to them?
Wait, you mean I know that what they're saying is
Like
wrong?
like I have my best friend Larry Karaszewski, part of the Karaszewski
Oh, I know
Alexander.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, we went to high school
Yeah.
together.
Oh yeah.
Like he said when he read Heather's, he says, "Do all three of them need to be named Heather?" Now, like I love Larry. Larry
Oh,
gave
like that.
mostly
Yeah.
great notes, but that's a shitty note. And like, I mean, do
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah. That's not a good one.
do you, do you have a
Yeah.
radar that knows when you get a good note and when you get a not good note?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And sometimes I just try to if I think something's wrong, I just try to understand like where it's coming from and why that's the note. And sometimes it addresses some other problem they had, or sometimes, and this happens to everybody, sometimes some people misread things. Sometimes people just misread things and you have to explain, oh no, 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 they're not actually having the affair. That's a joke, and it'll be obvious that it's a joke, which is something we're talking about was just talking about yesterday with that. So that's sometimes happens too. And if you're working with smart, nice people, they'll be able to self-reflect and say, oh, you're right, I misread it. But otherwise, some notes are really wonderful. And if you're getting the same note from multiple people, there's probably something you might want to address.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
Well, Jesse, we understand if you have to slip out in the middle
Yeah,
of the
sorry.
night, but
Thanks for having me on. This
thank
is
you.
a privilege to be on this with, I'm such a fan of
Thank
the other writers here, and thank you, Daniel, for hosting.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Scott and Bryan, obviously your answer is each other, but eventually your script has to leave the treehouse. Take me through the process.
Yeah. Well, it's such a your question's so important. I think like you kind of write with with an ideal reader in mind. Obviously, like you said, it's each other. I'm hoping that I'm gonna impress Scott with the writing. I'm hoping I'm gonna make him laugh. I'm hoping I'm gonna surprise him. And inevitably I'm doing none of those things. And he's gonna let me know that. And I'm gonna, try to do better, or he'll just rewrite me and get it done himself. But we're always kind of imagining that reader, and then we have a group of friends that we've grown up with, some who are movie lovers and are in the movie business and can understand how to read a script, and some are just like we've got a buddy who reads all of our scripts who like works at a grocery store, and like and so we like that feedback. It always helps us. It gives us a sense of what is interesting, what's not interesting, where the problems are. Yeah. And then of course, like our wives and are instrumental to giving us feedback as well. They give great feedback, and
they pull no punches
they're-
either, even if they read the whole thing
very
and they're
painful.
and they're
Very painful.
questioning like fundamental foundations. Like it's painful to hear that, but it's like I'd rather hear that now than like make the movie and then hear that in the reviews later. So
Yeah, no, I think it's just so important to have, like you say, ideal readers. Do you ever make each other jealous? Like, oh,
Oh,
God,
wow.
wish I would have wrote that.
yeah,
That's so
I'd say
interesting.
so.
Yeah.
Like no, I definitely think so. But I think that's kind of like what fuels us back and forth, because we're not the duo that writes in the same room. It's like I want to be impressed when Bryan sends me something. And if he does, I'm like, damn, now for the next like 5 to 10 pages that I need to write, I need to step on my game. Or it's vice versa, where I'm like, I think I can impress him and go a little further. So it is really a healthy competition that we try to keep.
It's really this simple, because like we do have this competition. Like I remember when Scott and I were making movies as kids, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, we used to kind of direct our own little movies, but we'd kind of write them together and produce them together. And out of nowhere, Scott busted out an over the shoulder shot. And my young mind had not comprehended the scene over somebody's shoulder for a close up. And I was just like, damn, like I gotta up my game. Like this is serious filmmaking. So all along, like I feel like there's like a series of the silly little things that we kind of like like it inspires us to push a little harder.
That's hilarious. Megan, do you have your people?
Yeah, I have one friend, and she's not in the industry. I mean, she's a publicist for Broadway shows in New York, my friend Chelsea, but she's just so smart and so funny. And she has the perfect amount where she understands the industry, but she's also away from it. And we have very similar senses of humor and taste. So she's usually number one that I send it to. And it's kind of like if I have 20 pages, I'll send it to her, and like her feedback will really keep me excited and keep me going. Another good friend who's a genius actress, writer, director, Katie Boland from Toronto, I've known since I was 15.
Oh, that's
Pardon?
so fun. One of my best friends directed Katie when she was a child in a short film.
No way.
Yeah.
She's the best, and yeah, just like a safe place. But I was really lucky with Lucky Chap, the producers on the movie. They were so, again, I don't send them anything until it's finished, but they really were helpful in the process, in the rewriting process. Um, but yeah, I usually keep things pretty close. I don't share. Now Maisie has become a really good
Oh,
person.
really?
Yeah, like when, and as I was doing rewrites of the film, because I had originally written the older character to be in their like late 50s, and I rewrote it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I rewrote it for Aubrey, but I was so caught up on finding someone who looked like Maisie, and eventually I was like, who do I want to see on the log? And it was Aubrey, and everyone was like, she doesn't look like Maisie, and I'm like, fuck it, I'll write in a couple jokes, and that'll be, who cares? Like she
Yeah.
is the essence of this movie. And so during the rewrite process, I would send a lot of stuff to Maisie to gauge her reaction. Now I'm working on something that is very much in her wheelhouse, and she's somebody like I'll send some screenshots to, and I can instantly gauge whether she thinks it's cool or funny, and I'll change things. She's a great litmus test for, that age demographic. But yeah, it kind of depends on the project, but usually outside of the industry, friends are like key for me.
That's great. That's great. And have you ever had a big disagreement? I mean, how do you react to, like I say, I keep going back to, like, most of the time you're hearing fresh, great stuff that's really helpful, but occasionally, if you're not careful, you can be led down the wrong road just because one person says something at the wrong time. Like, that's why I don't tell people, like, did anybody push back on the title? Did anybody
Yeah.
say that kooky summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I know what the story is, and so I can have a good radar on what's going to be helpful and what's not going to be helpful. I'm always open to all of it, but I've never been super derailed by feedback if I know that it's not the story, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, we were going to make the movie in the system, and when we took it out, we had a lot of people being like, "Great movie. Obviously, the title is ridiculous. We're going to have to change this." And it actually became again like a good testament to who understood the movie. And at a certain point, we were like, "Let's just make this ourselves the way we want to make it. We'll make it for less money." But I think, with Lucky Chap and the people involved, we knew what the movie was, and we knew we'd have a lot of freedom to do it the way that we wanted to do it, and then hopefully sell it out of the festival, which is what happened. But it kind of, honestly, I wrote the title being like, fuck it, let's see. I want to see lawyers sending out emails all the time about
Yeah.
my old ass and my old ass contracts, and just hearing people say it in a professional setting. And here we are talking about it in a professional setting. So it's brings me joy.
I'm glad. Aaron, you finished the script. Who do you give it to?
I give it to my wife, Vanessa, who's also has produced all my films. But until that moment, nobody has seen anything. I don't talk about my script at all. I do it completely alone, and it's torture to do it that way. I don't know why I do it that way, but I'm too embarrassed to give over anything that doesn't seem like it's perfect. It has to be perfect. It has to be so perfect that nobody's going to give me any notes whatsoever. So I give it to Vanessa, and she usually has a few notes, regardless. And then I give it to my friend John. Usually those two people, and I think I'm good at filtering notes. Usually I ignore notes, but there was one that they both said that in this film, Edward should be an actor. He wasn't an actor in the usually every film I've made, the first draft is what I've made, and that's basically true in this case, except I changed it so that Edward was an actor, and I fought that note for a little while, but then I thought it's actually an interesting note, so I incorporated it, and that was the one thing I changed.
Yeah, I'm the same way. The idea of having Jim at the library the way Jesse did, giving him pages every
Yeah,
day,
yeah, that's really
asking about the gas station. I'm like, fuck, I couldn't do that. I would be like catatonic. I need to, like, give them the best possible version. I don't even tell them the title. But did you
yeah. I
give
mean, nobody knows what I'm working on, even now. I don't tell them.
well, I find when you answer, well, what's it about? I find that's the deadliest question I ever get. Like, if I tell you it's about that, I'm going to look, see something in your face, a twitch in your face, and then it's
Yeah.
my day's ruined.
Yep. Yeah.
Did,
It'll destroy everything. Yeah.
did you give it to Adam early, Adam Pearson?
No, I told him that I was writing it and I gave him some idea, but I basically said, I'm writing a role for you. It's sort of based on your personality, which is gregarious, but I'm not going to be, I'm going to write it however I want to write it. A, would you want to work with me again? That was really the only question I asked. Would you work with me again? He said, yeah. So I said, okay, I'll send it to you when it's done. And I sent it to him when it was done, and I waited for 2 hours or so, and he called back and he said, I have to sing karaoke. And that was always, yeah.
So great. It's such a great scene.
It's a great, yeah. It's he was nervous about it, and I was nervous about it, but I think it's the maybe the best scene in the movie.
Okay, I should mention for all you out there listening, growing weary of my exhaustingly overwritten questions, please put a query out in the chat room. I guess I guess that's the way it's done. We'll try to get to some of them. I'm gonna skip ahead. Let's see here. Let's talk about the greatest place in the world, the editing room. Do you think of editing as a continuation of the writing, or is the script completely irrelevant at that point? Is your editor just listening to everything you say, or do you take feedback from your editor? Let me into that process, Megan.
I think you have to kind of let go of everything when you're in the edit. I do. I mean, you have to just work with what you have at that point. I mean, this movie was pretty much true to the original script, but it was a lot more heartfelt than we had imagined. The movie and the script ended with Elliot and her brother corralling the cranberries into a giant cranberry dick, and then the camera like pans up and the dad yells at her, and they laugh, and it was funny for sure, but the movie felt so much more heartfelt. So we ended up using some stuff that was supposed to be in the opening of the movie for the ending. So I think the edit, your movie is what it is on paper, and then it's what you shot, and then it's something else completely in the edit, and you kind of have to be open-minded. My editor, Jen Vecchiarello, was amazing and a genius, and I really look to her. It's such an isolating process, like just you and an editor in a room for so long that you kind of sometimes get a little lost and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. So it's, to me, the scariest part of the process, because it really does make or break the film, I think. But yeah, it was, I was very open to her feedback first and foremost. I think if you like open it too wide, it gets like too many cooks in the kitchen. But yeah, it's kind of a difficult part of the process for me when you're kind of faced with the reality of what you dreamed maybe something would be and what you have. And it's also surprising and amazing sometimes. So it's like, yeah, it's some days are great in the edit. A lot of days are hard in the edit, I find.
Yeah, was there anything in your original script like, oh God, that's not going to make it?
Yeah, there was a lot actually that didn't make it. There was a lot of just like really like beautiful stuff with the family that didn't end up making it. There was so much hilarious stuff with Aubrey that I mean, there was endless amounts of footage of her.
How do you cut a joke? How do you cut a laugh? That's always the toughest part.
I know, it was actually really hard. There was a whole other scene actually with Aubrey and Maisie, where they're skinny dipping together during the initial mushroom trip, and we actually didn't have the line "Stay away from a guy named Chad." We realized on camera, other than in that scene, and so it was like a crazy, crazy, crazy thing to try to cut that together, because the way that it was crafted in the original scene, I don't think I trusted my audience enough to understand what was going on. And generally it was like, I don't think we need this scene. I think it gives away too much. And it was like such a great scene and so fun, and the performances were amazing. And then there was this essential moment where she warns her about Chad. So I was like, well, we need this scene. What the fuck are we going to do? And so it kind of became, surgery, and to figure out we realized, no, we don't need that scene. It does potentially give too much away. We can trust the audience more. But it was a lot of precise surgical things to make it seem like we had that line on camera, which we did not, which was
Wow,
a
that
learning
line,
for
so
me.
important. That's fantastic, though. Great story. Thank you. Aaron, it sounds like you wrote a first draft. You made the first draft, but was there any funny business in the editing room where the movie became something different?
No, I mean, I know that that can happen, and I do believe editing is in many ways the most important part of filmmaking. And I have seen films get remade. In my mind, I've failed if I have to fix things in the edit, although that's just my own prejudice about my own films. And the other thing is I don't get coverage. So to me, everything I get, I have to put in the film and hope that it strings together. And which is not to say that there's not a lot of editing involved. I mean, we spent a lot of time editing, but it's tweaking very small things. It's making the scenes a little bit shorter. You know, a lot of scenes are shot in one or two shots. So I don't give myself a lot of leeway. So it's really, it becomes a game to figure out, you know, this scene is not so strong or it's sort of not so great in the middle of it. You know, dies down. What do we do? And so I do a lot of dialogue editing with my editor. If I have eight takes of a scene, but the whole scene is one shot. You can bet that that one shot will have dialogue from all eight takes, but then I've gone through it all, stuck it in
Wow.
there, but nobody will know.
Wow,
So a lot of
fantastic.
editing in that way.
Great, great. Brian and Scott, how about you guys sound like what do you guys like in the editing room? Is one do more like I know for myself, I didn't have a great time directing. I like to take naps. It's an important part of my process, and nobody likes naps when you're a director. And I never met a lunch penalty I didn't like. But when I got to the editing room, I felt like a caveman who finally had his pelts and can cook the food finally. But what was does one of you like the editing process more than the other?
I think we both grew up editing our own movies, and we had an incredible editor on this one, Justin Lee, who put together the first time in our career a rough assembly where we immediately didn't want to go jump off a bridge that much. It was a situation though where like we had three editing systems, so Justin could be working on something and Bryan could be working on something and I could be working on something, and we would try to finesse the edit in a way where like we go reel by reel and just like make every scene exactly how we felt it wanted to be. And then you sit back and you watch the whole piece and you're like, all right, now we have that foundation. Let's play some jazz. And I feel like one of the biggest things that we were wrestling with is the ending of Heretic. I won't spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it does invite a question to the audience to kind of invoke their own sense of what they just witnessed. And on the page, it was very clear, but I feel like once we got to the editing room,
Yeah, on the page
it
we can
was
just
rough.
say,
Yeah.
on the page we can just say, and here's what you're supposed to get
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
ending. But like visualizing it, it was tricky to get that feeling, to get that audience to walk out and have that conversation. And you almost had to like screen it with small groups of friends and family to see what they were poking at and what they were rejecting, because we wanted a little bit of rejection in there too, in terms of the audience's feeling about the ending. And so it was so tricky. This movie was by far the closest to the script as any movie. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
it's like
no
not,
deleted
it's
scenes
not
really.
that different, but like, but that's not to say like our post period was long and rigorous, because we like to tweak and drill and try this music, try this feeling, try this sound effect, and no idea is a bad idea. And yeah, it's a process we do enjoy, as long as we're controlling the process.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you find yourself in like a studio situation where maybe 8 months of post or is not as fun, but this one was great.
Great, great. Well, I'm not seeing a lot of questions in the chat room. I don't know if that's because you're blown away by my questions and everybody's answering and you're having a great time. But again, if you have any questions. Oh, what the hell? What am I supposed to click? Uh-oh. Oh, you mean all these questions in the click? Oh my God. I didn't see this. So I have been hiding questions from you. Oh, Lordy. Well, while I'm going through these, quick little closing question that I asked last year that I want to know. What's the worst piece of Aaron, what's the worst piece of screenwriting advice you ever got? And what's the best piece of screenwriting advice?
I don't know. Jeez. I think I went to film school which with a pretty rigorous screenwriting program, and was given the usual famous screenwriting manuals, and I thought it was all bad advice. I ran the opposite direction. So it's not to say that there's not useful things to take from that stuff, but I really think people, I don't know, I think that when you start thinking too much about structure and too much about screenplay format, you lose some personality, and lose really what the story that you're trying to tell. I don't know. I wish I had more specific
No,
answer.
that's great. What if you could go back to your younger self and give a piece of screenwriting advice? What would you tell them? To ignore all the screenwriting books, or what would you tell your younger self?
I did ignore all the screenwriting books, and I think I'd probably tell myself that I think I was so against that stuff that my first movie, which nobody has seen, it's basically which is pretty experimental, was sort of my answer to all that, and the movie is not any good. So I think that in some ways I came back to um, structure and stuff like that, but I had to sort of find my own way back to it, and I do spend a lot of time thinking about structure, but it's my own internal structure. It's not based on any rules, but I know all this stuff is just guideposts, and people can take what they want from this stuff. So I really would just think that there's no right way to do anything.
Absolutely. Bryan and Scott, surely you guys have heard some bad screenwriting advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bad thing that comes to mind is we were sitting in like a notes session. I'll back up for a second. Like one thing that we've kind of habitually found ourselves doing in our scripts ever since A Quiet Place was trying to make the read as exciting as possible, because for us, like screenplays by virtue of the format can be very dull and boring because they are to a certain degree a blueprint. And so we're like, what's going to turn the page or give you the feeling of the movie? And so sometimes that means putting images into the script. Sometimes it means being a little more playful with the word formatting and such, just to get a feeling across. Like that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And there was one time we were sitting at a meeting and a producer like held up page on a script where maybe we're being a little fancy, but it felt like it was a good decision for what the content was. And he was like, you can't do this. You can't do this at all. You can't put like only one word on a page or something.
What are all these typos here? What are all these typos?
Yeah. And for us, that was like, that's the fun of it. And that script and another script that we did like that sold like the next week. And so the idea of rules, kind of what Aaron was saying, like to us, it's like what feels right for what the story is that you're trying to tell. And then the best, I think like one thing that comes to mind for the best advice, Sam Raimi produced a couple things for us in the last like few years, and his process that he applies to his own films, and now we've done carrying forward, is like sit around a table and read through the script, not like with the cast and such, but like just early on, and it can be with your producer or just yourself, and read it out loud.
Like, yeah, like in our experiences, it was like a couple producers, Sam, and then like a couple assistants in the room, and everyone takes a part. And Sam Raimi will like read this character, and then Scott will read that character, and you read the script, and anytime somebody bumps on something or has a comment, you just kind of politely raise your hand and, oh, look, I didn't really quite understand this part, or I didn't really, and it's just such a polite, I don't know, non-threatening way to get feedback on a piece of material that you've written. Because I feel like, especially when you're talking about like studio films, it can get so hostile and tense, and also like just as self-conscious writers who want to do good work, where you're just always like, I'm speaking of us personally, like afraid to sometimes go, oh no, like what didn't they like and why didn't they like it, and now I have to be defensive. And his process is it's just so low key and beautiful, and I'd recommend it to anybody, especially if in a room of people that you trust, because it helps you see the material that you've written through somebody else's eyes, and it helps you understand how they're seeing it, and how that may or may not differ from what you think you're communicating. It's very cool.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Megan, bad piece of screenwriting advice you overcame?
My least favorite word is propulsion. And my my other hated word is make your character more active and less reactive. I'm like, that's when I hear those words, I just am like, whatever. Like, it's just I don't really think that matters. I don't believe in that. Doesn't make sense to me. And the best piece of advice, I think I never went to film school. I'm not a cinephile. I grew up without a TV. And so I had a lot of insecurities, like I couldn't do this, and I wasn't allowed to do this. I never even have read a book on screenwriting. But I've been so lucky, lucky chap who I did this movie with, and I'm doing my next movie and my TV show with, because it's been such a wonderful relationship. They constantly just look to me and they say, what does your gut say? What does your gut say? Every step of the way. And I remember a moment when Tom Ackerley on set, there was a confusing thing. He said, I just want you to close your eyes and just tell us what your gut says. Like, just don't think. And I find myself doing that all the time. I really try not to think too much, and I just go forward. I go forward. I go forward. I try not to reread the pages too many times until I get to the end, and just continue to like listen to that feeling more than anything else.
That's great. I loved all your answers to that question. That was great. There was some actually good screenwriting advice given. Who knew? Who knew? Fantastic. Boy, I'm looking through these questions are intense. They love your movies, but like, oh, I don't know how to get to these questions. All right, I'm gonna throw this in your lap, Bryan Scott. This is a deep cut. I hope you're ready.
I'm scared.
Oh my God, you should be. For Brian Woods and Scott Beck, Heretic. How many people mispronounce the word? I know Maria mispronounced it.
Yeah, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
It's okay though. It sounds
I
good.
think you're going to teach the world how to say the word. Okay, I can't believe I'm asking this, but this is not a question I would ask, but this guy really seems to be into it. What was the process like finding the symbolism you wanted? I noticed Dante's Inferno, his home being like the Inferno, the iterations that were scattered through the dialogue, chains in different states, the miniatures. What was the intentions, and how did you find them and make them connect in your narrative?
Ooh, yeah, okay. That is a tough question because it's so broad, and it's like it could be referencing so many different things in the movie. I'm at an attempt to answer that in a broad way, which is probably a disappointing answer. We're big believers in keeping our antenna out, whatever that means. Listening to the script, and listening to the kind of thematic ideas that we're excited about, and the symbolic ideas and the visual ideas. And so we're just kind of wired that way. We're always trying to like connect things, and find associations, and especially with a movie that is touching on such a rich history of things. It felt important, but
it's just like I think I find our process of making a movie, writing a script lasts over the course of on average like a decade. Like each of the films that we've been fortunate enough to make, those were like a decade in the making. And that doesn't mean we're literally working on every single day for 10 years, but it means we're we're laying like an adhesive of a story idea, and that adhesive is like, I think this character could be interesting. This is like the setting. This is the concept. This is the first act. And then over the course of 10 years, that adhesive starts attracting more and more ideas. So like the Dante's Inferno thing, I feel like actually came later in the process than one might think, because it feels like there's an obvious correlation of Reed's house and just the physical manifestation of that, but then also what it says from kind of just a story standpoint, and comparing Dante's Inferno to what Heretic really is at its core. But that comes late, but that kind of like finds its way into the glue, and then it's like, oh, we actually can literally reference it in like this shot in this movie that's fairly integral. So yeah, I think like Bryan, like you just have to keep your antennas out. And sometimes that comes down to rewriting the movie when you are in script stage, or maybe when you're talking to a production designer and there's a great idea that feels like it's connective tissue at that
And we're
point.
just always writing like notes. We walk around with little notebooks. We've got our phone note app. We're just, oh, that's interesting. Think about that. And then you write it down. And then,
Yeah.
and the act of
And
writing.
you both do that.
We both
Yes.
do that obsessively. And we get like cute about it. Like we'll like go to the office supply store and like, oh, that's a neat journal. And like, that's a, we're like, anyway,
Yeah.
it's the embarrassing things we do to kind of like trick ourselves into writing and enjoying it. But yeah, and no idea is too small. And the act of writing the idea, it's not about, we don't go back through our journals and go, what was that idea? It doesn't matter. The act of writing the note down is now it's in our head. It's in the script.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm answering some of these Megan questions to myself, because now that you've told me that you never had a TV, I'm like, I'm gonna guess you weren't inspired by Trading Places, Like Father, Like Son, and all the identity switch movies of the 70s and 80s. I'm gonna
I've never
say
seen one
no.
of them. I haven't seen any of those movies, but I'm sure they're great. People laugh at me every day. They reference movies, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'll add it to my list. No, I mean, no, I just didn't want the movie to feel like sci-fi, to be honest. Like I just wanted, it's such a
Yeah.
crazy idea, but I wanted to be really grounded. So
Yeah,
no,
my
there
brother,
was
my brother directed a movie I love, Freaky Friday, but it has this weird Chinese totem that makes him switch bodies. Like, just no one's gonna ask. Just have him
it's a
switch bodies.
buy-in. That's what we said. Like it's a buy-in. You're like 13 going on 30. She goes in the closet, magic dust sprinkles on her head, and she's 30. Like we just felt like if the buy-in was a ride that you wanted to be on, then that was enough, hopefully. And if people left the movie being like, how did that time? Like we fucked up, that was like not the point of the movie.
Exactly. Well, as we're coming to the end, let's talk about endings. I'm not going to give away anything directly, but all your films had endings that destroyed me in the best possible way. I want to go down the line, get some quick takes from you. Aaron, oh, Edward, you'll never change is a perfectly written and delivered last line. Was it always the last line of the script?
No, I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, obviously you had that line and you wrote backwards," but that line was the last thing that I wrote.
You're kidding.
I really am not. I really usually I don't have an ending. I never have an ending in mind. Uh, and then one day I just, when I get to the point, I write something, and that first thing that I read, it always ends up being the ending. And in fact, I wrote that line. That's how I ended it. And I thought, oh, no, that's a pretty good ending. And then I gave it to one of the two people I mentioned that who read my scripts, and I remember my friend said, "That's a terrible last line, you know.
What?
No, that's not nothing, that's not good." And so I considered it, and I thought maybe he's right. And but I kept it, and now it seems to. I mean, I also think though that the actors elevate that line. But
Yeah,
in
yeah.
any
A
event,
lot of it's the delivery.
I did not. That was the last thing I wrote. I came up with it, and then I wrote the end, and then I was done with the script.
Well, I'm glad it survived. Now, Scott and Bryan, you kind of talked around your ending, but with I'll just say in the secret handshake Easter egg way, I love the ending. Which one of you came up with the butterfly?
Oh my gosh. Well, I can tell I mean, aside from your amazing credits as a screenwriter, I can tell that you're a storyteller because you've been gunning for conflict this entire experience.
Yeah. It's funny. Okay.
This is one of the, I want to say, well, what do you want to say?
I actually I recall this now. It was early in the script. There's there's a mention of a butterfly, and Bryan had written that line. It comes out of Chloe, who plays Sister Paxton. Bryan wrote that, and I remember as soon as I saw that line, I was like, "Oh, here's the ending of the movie." And then I think I brought that up to Bryan, and Bryan was like, "That's the ending of the movie." Like again, it was like that mind meld
Oh my
at
God,
work.
that's you guys in a nutshell. This is a perfect microcosm. I love this.
It's incredible when that happens because it feels like we are in the same wavelength and we know where we need to go, and then that helps fill in the gaps throughout the process. But I think for us, like the inspiration, we talked a lot about David Mamet's Oleana, this play that's this becomes this explosive back and forth about gender, and when the play was put on, legend has it that people got into fistfights outside the theater based on their interpretation of what the ending was. And even when they produced the play, supposedly they had changed the ending. One dialogue tweak changed the entire interpretation of it, and that created more conflict. And for us, we felt like this movie, where it deals with the idea of being religious or non-religious and these existential quandaries of what happens once you depart the earth. Does nothing happen? Does something else happen? Those are all very personal, reflective topics that somebody has to ingest for themselves. By no means are we qualified, or I would dare say anyone is qualified to put a definitive stamp on those answers. And so it felt like for us, the spirit of this was to invoke a conversation if somebody wants to engage with the movie on that level. And so the ending had to really chase that notion and reflect it.
Awesome, awesome. Megan, don't tell me the phone call between the two Elliots at the end was the same in your first draft as the last draft. Tell me you had to go through the process of making and living the film before writing something that wise and wonderful.
The voice message did change slightly, yeah, absolutely. As I said, there was a different ending that was part of the ending, but yeah, once we knew what the movie was and how it left people feeling, we did tweak that slightly, which was, I think, helpful. But sort of like Aaron, like I didn't know the ending of the movie when I started writing it. I've never written an outline. In fact, for my show, they just asked me to write an outline. I was like, shit, I don't know how to do that. So I just wrote the pilot and then reverse engineered it to an outline. I was like, that's going to be harder for me than writing.
Well, I hate writing outlines I love doing outlines for myself that in my own fucked up way, but I hate doing them for other people. Performative outlines are always the worst.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, the hug was always something. A lot of times, like I'll see a scene and then I have to like write my way into it.
You didn't even have the hug?
No, I mean I saw the hug, but the hug was always in the script. That whole scene was always there. But I'm saying like I saw that moment and I was like, ooh, how do I get there? Because I knew that was that's the story, that's the moment. And so that was a really important North Star to get to in the right way. And then the voice message, to the actor's credit, I mean, fuck, that scene really hit hard. And that's why we wanted to tweak the last voice message a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my entire Thanksgiving cabin was crying. So well done. Okay. I didn't get to a lot of your questions. Most of them were comments, loving the movies. But I think that we're going to end with the endings. Thank you so much, everybody. Aaron, Bryan, Scott, Megan, and Jesse, who left us. I thought we ended up uncovering some good shit.
I think so too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I don't know how we end. I'm just going to wave and
We'll all awkwardly wave. That's how we'll end.
Wave.
Bye.